I call the honourable member Grant Robertson.
Thank you very much, Mr Chair, and it seems a little unusual to stand up and join in the love fest that we have here in Part 1 of this bill, because it seems that most parties in Parliament will support it. Unusual feeling for me to be able to stand up and affirm something that the government's doing here, but don't worry, I'll get to some problems in a minute. The first thing I want to do is pick up where Kevin Haig left off in his excellent speech he's just given, to indicate that there is something in this bill that shows that the government gets the idea of what public health might be, what the Ottawa Charter means, and that's the inclusion by the Select Committee, and presumably with the agreement of the government members, if they were awake during this bit of the Select Committee, where the phrase "and well-being" has been included within the functions and duties of the and powers of the Health Promotion Agency under the new Section 58. And so the inclusion of wellbeing indicates that we are now moving beyond a notion that this is somehow a medical matter to the fact that this is a wider issue of public health, a wider issue of wellbeing of our communities. And as Kevin Haig spoke before about what the core elements of the Ottawa Charter are, the fact that it does move beyond health and well-being to the question of empowerment of communities, to the question of the environments in which communities live. These are the core elements of what public health means today in New Zealand. So I do credit the committee and indeed the government for putting in the notion of well-being. But my cynicism, Mr Chair, and where I would like the Minister to take a call, my cynicism rises in response to how the government has looked after public health over the last 3 years. And when I say looked after, I mean cut. That's what I mean when I say looked after, because that's what this government has done with public health. It's certainly lowered it in priority beside other parts of the health system, particularly in terms of secondary services. And particularly if we look at something like the Healthy Eating, Healthy Action program that was brought in under the last Labor government. That was, well, Ms Antoli says I'm joking. The problem is, so the system wasn't perfect, the Healthy Eating, Healthy Action program wasn't perfect, so therefore we get rid of it completely. That's Antoli's solution to public health. If it's not perfect, get rid of it completely. That's what this government has done. And so that's why on this side of the House we're somewhat cynical as to whether the government will actually provide the resources that are needed to ensure that this works. We support the notion of integration of these services. We support the notion that we will actually have an agency that will look at public health in its widest context. But it will only achieve its goal if this government is prepared to give it the resources it needs, to put resources into prevention, to stop treating health over and over again as a political football so that Tony Ryle can hold up charts in here for targets that he's invented rather than what's actually going to help the long-term health outcomes of New Zealand. And that is investment in prevention, that is investment in public health programs. So I welcome the structure here, Mr Chair, but what I don't think we've seen from the government is a true commitment to public health, a true commitment to what it means to actually support the principles of the Ottawa Charter. And I know that all of the agencies, or many of the agencies who submitted on this bill, said that they supported this because they are looking for that better integration. They are looking for a more responsive public service when it comes to public health matters, but they will only get that if the resources follow. Mr Speaker, the second question I've got for the Minister is actually around what he can tell us about the current responsibilities of the Ministry of Health's Public Health Directorate and how that fits within this new structure. Because as Kevin Haig has just talked about, the integration of policy and of practice and of monitoring is vitally important. We can see that the bill focuses on bringing together ALAC and the Health Sponsorship Council and their responsibilities, and that's good and that's useful. But what do we know about the actual work of the Ministry of Health? What do we know about ongoing monitoring? What do we know about how policy will work alongside in practice? So I just want some assurances from the Minister that the responsibilities of the Ministry of Health in the public health area will actually be explicitly put in front of those who will be doing the work of this agency. My colleague Ian Lees-Galloway, Mr Chair, has already mentioned the fact that some concerns were raised about the fact that ALAC is disappearing at the very time that New Zealand is confronting what to do about the issues around alcohol in our community. I do note that the bill under Section 58 does give the alcohol-specific functions to the new HPA. That is at least something. But once again, we need to know from the Minister that, Mr Chair,
I call the honourable member Grant Robertson.
we need to know from the Minister that those responsibilities will go on into the wider issues of alcohol, its impact on the community, what damage it does in the wider environments in which people live. Those kinds of considerations are vitally important, Mr Chair, if we're going to get a functioning organisation under this part of the bill. So, Mr Speaker, I'm not going to take much more time up of the House on this. Labor does support part 1 of this bill. We do believe that this structure provides an opportunity to actually see real implementation of the principles of the Ottawa Charter, real implementation of public health policy, but we sound the warning that the government needs to assure New Zealanders that this will be resourced and funded to enable it to do its job properly, that it will be given the kind of priority that it should be given, and that it will continue to provide the linkages between policy, practice, monitoring and promotion of public health. Mr Chair.
I recognise the member, Chris Farfall. Honourable member.